Where do you draw the line, though?
Your entire point here doesn't really refute my position or argument.
Well, I'm not trying to refute your position. I'm just trying to see if you
understand. Hang on. Quick time out. Brainbug has just joined us. What's up, Brainbug? How you doing? Welcome to the stream.
Hi, Brainbug. What's up?
Hello.
Did you
guys?
Did you see the debate? If you did, what are your thoughts? If not, welcome to the stream.
I did not see the debate. I was just getting home when I saw this starting. So yeah, I was. I didn't get to catch that, but I saw all you guys in here discussing it, and I figured I'd join and catch up. So catch me up, John. What happened?
I mean, it was an interesting debate. There's a lot of, there's a lot of the standard back and forth stuff. Not I don't think I really heard too many new arguments. And
yeah,
there was definitely one of the points I made earlier was that it seems like in this series there's been a quite astonishing amount of unprepared opponents coming in, and it's like if you're and the kind of point I made earlier was like, why would you want to go, whether you agree or disagree with Kent, right? The dude's been debating longer than most of these people have been alive. And that's not figurative, right? Like, it's a literal statement. He's been debating since what, like 75 or something like that? I mean, it's nuts. Like, you better come in ready to rumble in, time. Again, even if you disagree, it's like, you better
he
be
was
ready.
willing to have fun with his opponent too, though. I mean, like when him and James were just jabbing each other, and you could see they were both in good humor doing it when James W. when they had the debate. Yeah, I thought so anyway when I was watching that one. That's the last debate I saw.
Yeah, that was a great debate.
And I actually am interested in this debate you have going on here between Donnie and Fro, because I'm really interested in the difference between like a theistic evolutionist and a creationist. So I understand Donnie's position, the 6,000 years creation event, straight biblical literalist, straight down the rows. I don't understand Fro's position though. What parts of the Genesis story is Genesis in itself entirely hyperbolic description of the creation of the universe?
Yeah, I'd love to know where Fro draws the line. So he
Listen,
says all
I'd like
mammals,
to
all
jump in
vertebrates
here.
are
Yeah,
related.
I want to know.
Where's this magical line then, Fro?
Come
would
on,
like to jump
Fro.
in on
This
that.
was interesting.
I would
Seems
like
like
to
a
jump
very poor model that I'm seeing from Fro.
Well,
I mean, where do you draw the line? Are
would
you
like to
always-
jump in.
Hey, guys, hang on. Let's let Fro respond. After all, he may have slipped on his banana peel. It's in his name after all. So let him recover. Let him recover, and go ahead, Fro. You go ahead and respond.
First, I'm glad you brought that up, because actually I said my name is basically just there to troll Donnie. I think I did that, so I'll probably change it back here soon. Anyway, so my position on Genesis is simply to read it as its ancient literature would understand, its ancient audience. And for that, I would say that the Genesis story is literal in so much that it is talking about God literally making the earth and all of cosmic reality, but it's more metaphorical on how it did it. Like the information is out there. For instance, when you look at scholars like like Michael Heiser or David Falk, for instance, he comments on this a little bit. You will actually see that that Genesis 1 is definitely a temple theological work, and what that means is that the creation of the earth is basically being compared to the way you would dedicate a temple to a god. For instance, the world was created in 6 days. In the same corpus, the Torah, we see that the Ark of the Covenant took about 6 months to build.
So you're like a first temple theologist.
Hold on. Later on in the Tanakh, we see that it took 6 years for Solomon to build Yahweh's temple. This is not a random number. What's going on here is that
Fro, you're rambling. We want to know where you draw the line.
Yeah, I am drawing the line, Donnie, and let me explain the
We've
line.
all read Heiser and Walton. We want to know, did God create through evolutionary theory? And if so, what is and what isn't related?
He's comparing it to Yahweh's temple. Now, the Torah is historical, but when ancient people wrote their histories, they wrote their history with as much myth as much as they did actual information. For instance, Abraham is definitely a historical figure, and you could argue that perhaps Adam and Eve are too, though I might dispute that. what's going on is that like Genesis 1 oftentimes is to be allegorical and figurative, but there are equal amounts of historical value in there too.
Okay, so did God bring about humans through evolutionary processes? Are humans and chimpanzees related through common ancestry, bro?
Yes.
Okay, so again, from our discussion a month ago, now that you've had a month to look into it, how do you explain the Y chromosomal dissimilarity between humans and chimpanzees if they really are related through common ancestry? Did you find an answer yet to that?
Well, yeah, because they can be disrelated, but here's the issue. That's how about that? That's a lot like saying, how is it that water can be ice when they're clearly different? Listen,
Well, no,
like
you're misunderstanding the argument.
when things evolve,
How similar are human? No,
going
Fro,
to
you're
see
dodging.
change in the
Listen,
genetic
Fro, you're dodging. How similar
but it is
are
still
human male
related
Y
to
chromosomes?
that original
Hang on,
species,
guys.
that
He's
original
Guys,
group.
monologuing, John. This guy is just the
Silence.
worst to
Oh,
talk
okay,
to.
both of you.
Well, yeah,
Well,
that's
maybe.
because you try to overtalk me,
Okay,
Donnie.
we're about to
I'm
be
trying to get a
muted. There's
simple answer,
about
and
to be
every single answer you give
muting
is a
if you do.
monologue.
Oh, good grief! Both of you are getting silenced. Okay. So first off, I have to switch the overlay because we are here. I knew it was coming, and I flashed it earlier. It's definitely arrived. Okay, dumpster fire is in
People get heated over this.
full force. There's no doubt about it, and we shall see where things go. However, I also need to address the fact that Brainbug is laughing so hard over there. She's very internally laughing. You can see it right now in that smirk. He's been covering up the grin as SFT and Fro go at it. He's like, "Yes, I came in here and I instigated, and the fire is burning."
That's
Oh,
what
so
that's
hey,
what I'm
no.
doing when I watch your all's debates too. When I'm at home, I'm
So
laughing.
Brainbug, congratulations! You successfully catalyzed the dumpster fire. It has arrived. You can accept full responsibility for the current the current status. Okay.
Does he get a medal?
It's what the people want, John. We got to give them what they want, right?
That's true. That's true. You know,
Well,
what's
before
really
we
boiled
begin
down to is what YouTube is boiled down to is a bunch. It's just like American politics, right? It's all uniparty. There's not actually real distinctions other than in the fights on like on after shows. And then once they get done, Fro and Donnie are gonna like shake hands, call each other, and be like, "Man, did you see how we worked up all those idiots in the side chat?" That's what's really happening. But go ahead, guys, continue.
Okay, John.
Listen,
As Fro gives his monologue, I want you to
I need to change my name because I trolled Donnie. The troll is over, so I'm changing my name. Pale Galilean is back. Everybody, please subscribe and like of my videos. Thank you very much.
Okay, Fro, let me ask you a simple question. Please give a simple answer. How similar are human Y chromosomes, specifically male Y chromosomes, since the Y chromosome is uniparentally inherited DNA? How similar?
How similar are we to what? Chimpanzees?
No. All human male Y chromosomes, okay, worldwide. Take an African Y chromosome, a non-African Y chromosome, whatever. Just male Y chromosomes, human male Y chromosomes. How similar?
I can't give you a specific number, but we're all Homo sapiens, so they're basically the same.
Okay, what would you?
Minor variations.
Okay, what would you guess? What would you guess?
I would say about 90. Areas between 90 and 99.
Okay, so humans have low genetic diversity overall. The Y chromosome is about 99.99% similar. Every single male Y chromosome is nearly identical, very low genetic variation. That's why evolutionists refer to or look to a bottleneck in Africa that, they'll say that variation was reduced. Now, how similar is the human male Y chromosome to the chimpanzee Y chromosome, percentage-wise?
That's substantially less. If I remember, I remember somewhere between 70 and 85. It's been a while since. It's been a few years since I looked at that, though, so I could be wrong.
Well, here's the leading paper on it. Chimpanzee and human Y chromosomes are what? Remarkably divergent, drastically different in structure and gene content. And it's actually only half the size. So when we consider overall architecture, gene content, and size differences, it's only about 35% the same.
Donnie,
okay,
Donnie,
Fro, listen, every single... Oh,
Donnie,
I'm sorry,
just real quick, I got a question about the title of this. What does divergent mean?
In this paper, what does divergent mean in the Y chromosome? So divergent would mean that if the human Y chromosome is 99.99% similar between all human Y chromosomes, and the chimpanzees is roughly 70% or 35%.
But
If
if they diverge, what happened to them?
But see, here's the thing. That's a built-in evolutionary assumption. So they're going to say, well, this is, humans and chimpanzees split from a common ancestor 6 to 10 million years ago. And since that divergence event, humans and chimpanzees have diverged. And now it's only about 35% the same. But I mean, even you would admit that's a built-in assumption. That's assuming there was divergence, correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, the study shows divergence, right? The paper you're citing here is about divergence. It's about the way that they split from one another and how their genetics differ over different populations over temporal and geographic.
Well, the paper is just showing how different the Y chromosome is in humans to the chimpanzees. Yeah, they're going to assume there was a split, and therefore they're going to have to come up with various hypotheses as to how so many differences could accumulate since the split. The thing is, they're not questioning the split.
Or did the study
I'm questioning the split.
Did they assume there was a split, or did the study show there was a split?
No. The study doesn't show there's a split. Actually, the data in the study, I would argue and assert, shows that there could not have been a split, because if every single human male Y chromosome is 99.99% the same, very low genetic variation, and when we compare humans to the chimpanzee, our closest cousins should be the chimpanzee or the bonobo, right? But then we're only about 35% the same to the chimpanzee. How can you explain that much difference in, let's say, 6 to 10 million years since the split? How can you explain such massive differences in the Y chromosome, especially because the Y chromosome is non-recombining for the most part?
So can I respond to that?
Go ahead, Fro. So how do you explain those?
For me, now, as I said, when it comes to all evidence, you may accept or deny what's present before you, like I said at the beginning of the stream. But what I would say to there is, simply put, in order to account for that, you would need to be divergent. You would need to look at chimpanzees and humans, and there does by necessity have to be a divergence. The only question is there enough present evidence to reasonably assume there was a divergence?
And this data shows that there could not have been a divergence, because there's far too many differences in the Y chromosome. I'm asking you, Fro, how do you explain such drastic differences? Notice this, remarkably divergent. How do you explain such drastic differences in the human and chimpanzee Y chromosome if they're related through common ancestry? Go ahead, just answer that straightforward answer, please.
On that one, I can't. I'm not familiar enough with the paper that.
Well, a month ago, I pressed you on the same question you didn't know. So, are you even interested in looking into this, or are you just interested in repeating your talking points over and over again? So, no, you don't have an answer now. You didn't have an answer a month ago. You're not going to have an answer a month from now, because there is no answer, Fro.
Oh, thanks for answering that for me. All right, I guess we're done here then.
Well, I think that I want to hear what Brainbug's answer to that is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that our genome is so homogeneous. Obviously, there's been bottlenecks in our evolution, but it's selective breeding of within your population, and actually tribalism, I think, is what largely can be attributed to our genome being the way it is and so small, like Donnie was saying, because we see the same thing in domestic species and in other organisms, like dogs have their genome is really weird. Dogs' genome is really especially weird, but pigs and horses and things like that, we can see that their genomes are very much like what we see in humans, very selectively bred, very sculpted.
Well, because if you look at this, I appreciate those points, Brainbug. If you look here, just to demonstrate what I was saying earlier, the human Y chromosome exhibits surprisingly low levels of genetic diversity, right? Over here, perhaps the most widely cited statistic about human genetic diversity is that, and then you can look here, human genetic diversity is substantially lower, okay? 99.99% similar. So when we check the Y chromosome in humans and chimpanzees, chimpanzees should be our closest cousin, then we would expect, okay, the Y chromosome's non-recombining, right? It's not like the autosomal DNA that recombines. And it's uniparentally inherited DNA, which means we can build some really nice family trees. But it turns out, and they were shocked too, that wow, when they actually got a good sequencing of the chimpanzee Y chromosome, they realized it's like half the size. I mean, look at this, the chimpanzee MSY contains twice as many massive palindromes as the human MSY. Yet, so if you actually read the paper, they're saying, well, there must have been this massive, rearrangement, this massive deletion, this completely reorganized itself in order to just explain why the structure, gene content, and architecture is so different. They call it what? Rapid evolution. I mean, this is all built-in assumptions. I mean, they're not even questioning if evolution happened. We would say, yeah, the Y chromosome is so different because humans were specially created and the chimpanzee / bonobo common ancestor was
SFT.
That makes more
Wait,
sense. Go ahead, take your time.
all right, can I ask you something, Danny, real quick? So hold on. If everything was Donnie, if everything was special creation, which again I would agree with that too, but you agreed on a much more different way. So if everything's a special creation, why do we share any genetic relation to chimpanzees at all then? Because we obviously share like 35% genetic similarity with them, but if we're all
in the Y chromosome,
creations, well, again, my point is, why does our Y chromosomes even match theirs at all, even 35%?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty silly question. Okay, we share
quite
a bit in terms of morphology, physiology, and anatomy with the chimpanzee. Okay, we have a lot of similar features. We both have hair, binocular vision, mammals. So of course we're going to have some genetic similarity in our genetics and our Y chromosome. Okay, all life it would be expected since we're the underlying building blocks is DNA, RNA, protein, and the phenotype is a reflection of the genotype. Therefore, we would expect some similarity in genotype because of the phenotype and so on and so forth.
I got a question.
So, I mean, the question is, why wouldn't there be similarities? Go ahead.
So, you know me, I don't know biology for the life of me. But DNA wise, like over the entire DNA chain, chimps and humans are very, very, very similar. So why are you referencing Y chromosomes in particular here versus just the DNA in general, which this paper here says 98.8% the same? Like, why Y chromosome? Why is that
That's
important?
a very good question, Org. Now, the reason why I'm looking to the Y chromosome, I could also look to the mitochondrial DNA, is because these DNA compartments, they are what's called uniparentally inherited DNA compartments, which means for the mitochondrial DNA, it's passed down from mothers. The Y chromosomes passed down from fathers. So for the most part, there's no recombination. So it's not as messy as your autosomal nuclear DNA, where you have recombination and the shuffling of genetic differences every single generation, right? You don't really get that with the uniparentally inherited DNA compartments, which means they should be good to look at since they would be expected to be less messy. So we should expect more similarity between human Y chromosomes and the chimpanzee Y chromosomes. Okay, and it just turned out that it's the least similar. Well, now overall, yeah, you could probably get.
Question was answered.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't believe his question was answered. He was saying, why is there 98% similarity between chimps and humans? But
35.
That's not, well, whatever. He didn't know. I'm talking about the overall DNA. Isn't that what you said?
I think he was asking why would we look at the Y chromosome
stop,
and not all the DNA?
I want to ask him. Didn't you say 98% similarity?
Yeah, the total DNA itself.
Yeah, right.
Is about it's almost 99% similar.
Okay, that's not true. That was an old cherry pick data from years ago. Modern puts it down when they do the BLAST-E, whatever they call them, database comparison. They get about less than 85%. That's a huge number. That's hundreds of millions of base pair differences. So that's an old red herring.
I'll throw my citation in the chat. You can throw yours in then. Mine's in the public.
It's no longer 98. It's no longer 98.
Well,
I mean,
okay,
people
so
claim
you have
it
a
is.
different,
People claim it is.
source. I don't know which is correct then.
People claim it is, but the modern database says no, it's not even close.
Again, I only have to go off of what I found. I'm not a biologist. Unlike, I guess no one here is a biologist either. But
check it out for yourself. Go and look at all.
As I just said, I did check it out for myself. That's where I got the number from. But
where did you get them from?
I just posted in the chat. I'll post it again in the public chat.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. Okay. I never mind.
Well, there's a section in this Y chromosome paper org that says and I'm paraphrasing here, the 30% difference among human and chimp MSY regions was a shock. This amount of difference was expected between the autosomes of human and a chicken. I mean, a chicken's not even a mammal. And, you know, the common ancestor between chickens and humans, if you believe in such a thing, would go back, you know, hundreds of millions of years, I'm sure.
So the Y chromosome for humans and chimps is as different as the Y chromosome for humans and chickens. Is that what you're saying?
No. It's what would have been expected in the autosome. So the autosomes are the recombining nuclear DNA.
Okay.
Okay, but the Y chromosome, for the most part, doesn't recombine. It's only inherited on one side, right? I get my Y chromosome from my dad. Okay, you got your Y chromosome from your dad, and your kids got it from you. So it's easier to trace back. It's easier to build family trees. Does that make sense? It's less messy. There's no shuffling every generation. So the question is, why should the Y chromosome, which should be more similar, less messy, actually less similar and more messy? Huge size differences, massive differences in architecture, in gene content. I mean, again, I pointed out it's like half the size in the chimpanzee. So the whole point is, if chimpanzees and humans really are related through common ancestry, then why is this uniparentally inherited DNA compartment so vastly different? You know, that's a question for the evolutionists, really.
Because we domesticated ourselves. That's why our Y chromosome.
Brain bug. That's what I was going to say, something along those lines. I think that's an interesting point, SFT. I can also see, again, right, coming from my worldview, I could see how we have a reasonable answer to that, but it would be cool to have people that are knowledgeable in this topic discuss this topic, because I don't know enough about it to parlay with you. You know more than me. But as Brainbug's saying, I think there is a reasonable evolutionary explanation to it, which is the artificial bottlenecking. I could see that in a world where everything I believe is true, I could see that coming to a similar result.
Yeah, but how does that help your case?
Okay. Hang on, guys. We got some new folks who have joined the stream, so we gotta let them jump in real quick, and then you guys can get back to this dumpster fire. And we'll let Donnie search for the next screen share. Okay. All right. Up next, we got Redefined Living. He just joined us. What's up, man? Welcome to the stream. How you doing? What are your thoughts?
Hey, thanks. I'm doing good.
And by the way, and I say tonight's debate, I don't mean the Fro Donnie debate. I mean the Kent Ken debate.
Well, Donnie's been sparring with everybody in here tonight.
Right, but this is
now I'm going to start
correct. But this
sparring
is the
with
Kent Ken after show, so we have to allow new attendees to the panel. They get to first. They say, "Hey, either I haven't seen it or I have seen it." If they have seen it, share their thoughts, and then we'll go back to the dumpster fire. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I caught most of it. Of course, you know, Ken won as always. This one was much easier than the previous. That's about it.
Wait a minute, you weren't convinced by the flying cat?
No.
All right. Okay. Then
I don't believe I'm related to a porcupine and a pear.
Well, Fro would say he's related to a porcupine, but for some reason not a
Donnie. It's not your turn. Okay, Zach, what's up, man? Welcome to the stream. How you doing? Did you see tonight's debate, or are you just joining the after show dumpster fire? If you saw the debate, what are your thoughts? And you have the floor.
Yeah, I haven't seen the debate yet. I got plans to watch that here on my drive into work. Just figured I would hop in on this barn burner. It seems like a good time.
It is a dumpster fire, sir, not a barn burner.
Well, I'm from Alberta, so we call them barn burners up here.
Uh-oh. Ladies and gentlemen, watch out. We may have another controversy. Is it a barn burner or a dumpster fire? I mean,
Next
what
week
kind of controversies? We're going to have Canadian, American. Fro, where are you from?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm from. Do you want to know my specific place?
No, I'm dude. I'm just answer the fucking question. Which country are you from?
You're
messing up the whole like. I'm about to say we're gonna have a Canadian United States battle.
Okay.
If
you
Fro
got it,
complicates every question, no matter how simple it is.
I haven't.
Where are you from? Fro gives 20-minute response.
I'm not gonna
Fro
lie.
has follow-up questions.
I have a habit of doing it. I'm not gonna lie, but I am an American. Yes.
Okay, cool. So now we're gonna have American versus Canadian. Is it barn burner or dumpster fire? Although I would wager that the Canadian would probably have a lot of Midwestern allies.
Hey, listen, Canadians are just bad Americans. That's all they are.
Yeah, I thought Alberta was Canada's Texas.
Oh, that's mean. Don't do that. That's mean.
What, Ogre? What, do you have something against Texas?
I'm gonna say no because they have a lot of guns.
Okay, so here's what I find
All
very
my exes
entertaining.
came from Texas.
So one of the things I find so funny about lefties and atheists also, but usually lefties, they get all worked up about Texas. It's like, yeah. So why don't you go tell all the people from California that are like mass deluge migration to Texas? Same thing from like in Tennessee where I'm at. There's a massive deluge of people coming in from New York, LA, Chicago, Boston, like coming to Tennessee out the wazoo and being like, oh my god, this is so amazing, this is awesome, I love it here. And then it's like, okay, so last month you were talking trash about, why would anybody want to live in the South? Dude, you just bought a house
I got an answer.
in the South.
Cost of living.
I know, but you got to think about this. This is what cracks me up how like
Austin.
And this is why it cracks me up so much about the fact that it seems like lefties do not think more than 2 steps ahead, right? It's like, oh, the cost of living is so amazing. Okay, cool. Why
do you
was the
think that
cost of
is?
living where you're moving from? Why did it suck so bad that you wanted to leave? What was the cause of the cost of living being ridiculous? Oh wait,
because the conservative government drove the
Blue state. That's why.
economy into the ground.
You
So
sound
it's
like a
everybody's
liberal.
poor,
Whoa,
so
whoa,
their
whoa,
wages
whoa,
aren't
whoa.
worth that much.
Okay, oh my goodness, Brainbug is clearly one of those dumbasses I'm referring to. Okay.
Oh, come on now.
Okay, so let's think about this logically. Okay, if
Possibly.
we'll use Tennessee for example, right? So Tennessee as a state has a surplus budget-wise, right? We have no state income tax, and we have some of the lowest property taxes in the United States, right? But we have a surplus as a state. The California, as an example, right, has the highest taxes. It has ridiculous cost of living, and it has a massive deficit.
And homeless.
And
Why are we comparing Tennessee?
and California has and I
in the
believe
middle of the road there. Tennessee's like Missouri or Illinois. It's like in the middle of the road. Do you want to compare a southern state to California?
No, but the point is, the point is, the left has been in control of California for so long now, and they've just been the overwhelming majority. They literally have no excuse, and California is a dump.
No,
live here. I'm
California's
saying
awful.
that.
I would never live there. Well, I couldn't afford to live there. Who can afford to live in
there's your
California?
blue state dream.
Okay,
right
so
there.
my
What's the
point.
excuse?
Whose blue state dream? Wait a minute.
Well, what's their excuse?
No, okay, hang on, guys. We're gonna go back to the point that catalyzed all this, which was, ooh, Texas, right? Okay,
Man, you guys take a joke way too seriously. Sweet Jesus.
Well, Ogre, I said the catalyst. Okay, it was the catalyst. I'm not saying you're responsible for all this. You just like kicked it off. Okay, the dumbassery
That makes me responsible. It's the definition of responsible.
Well, no, not for where it is now. Are you saying that you have been part of the extrapolation of all this and all the points?
Yes, 100%. No question.
Okay, you're the root of all evil from the lefties.
In a sense, yes. In the sense that Donnie loves to throw, I am the root of all evil. Yes.
Okay, gotcha. But anyway, my point is that all of these lefties who have been living in the bubbles of California, New York, Boston, etc., and acting like everything else is flyover country and there's nothing going on there. Why would we want to be here, right? They're now having these moments of epiphany that, wait a minute, I've been living in a shithole. And there's all these other places that are way freaking better and actually have all sorts of amazing opportunities that I've been telling myself didn't exist until I actually physically went there. And case in point, like where I live, we've got major corporations are moving here, moving their headquarters here, or moving like major branches here. Same thing's happening in Texas. Same thing's happening in Florida, right? All these businesses are having these moments of epiphany. Like, wait a minute. We can increase our profits just by doing business in a different state. We don't have to change anything. we just change where our headquarters is, or we're incorporated. Actually, I'm changing corporations and operations in terms of increasing profits because the cost of living for our employees plummets. Some of our operating costs literally vanish. Well, that's interesting. Why didn't we think about this before? Oh, wait, because we've been being told for the last 30 years that nothing else exists other than these little side windows. Anyway, enough of my tangent. We can get back to the other dumpster fire.
Oh, John, I think we could have some fun. Just me and you having a political discussion sometime. I think we could have a lot of fun.
Lefty versus righty night. Brain bug versus LPP. I want to see it.
Well, unfortunately,
California, Tennessee. Let's do this.
Oh my goodness, yeah, it's just
I actually moved from a red state to a blue state before I really started to prosper and take.
Oh, you moved from a mansion to a trailer? Is that what you just said?
Okay. So which blue state?
I moved to Illinois from Missouri, where I grew up.
Okay. Now,
I love Missouri. Don't get me wrong.
Hang on, Brainbug. You have to issue caveats though here. So, how old were you when you moved from Missouri to Illinois?
35.
35. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what changed from hang on, caveat, other preface. What you say you became successful, right? So
yeah, there was more job opportunity, more education opportunity. Missouri just didn't have a lot to offer as far as programs and stuff that I could get into to really get ahead. Because I started having kids when I was young, so trying to get through school was a little bit of a hassle. So it was moving over here made it a lot easier to finish that and to find a really better paying job, I guess, over here in Illinois.
Okay, so but you said just finished school. So are you saying that school was completed before or after your transfer?
Well, I started working and going to school in Illinois when I was still living in Missouri, and eventually my wife started working over here too, and eventually it was like, you know what, we're just going to move over there and be closer to work. We had some family that lived over here, so it just being able to take advantage of those opportunities that we could have over here. And I'm not saying that there's no opportunities in Missouri. In some areas in Missouri are really nice. The Columbia area of Missouri and down by around Lake of the Ozarks, beautiful country, nicest people, really prosperous area of the state, I think. But most of the state's really dirt poor, and you have these poor little towns where the kids don't have a lot of opportunities. So, these young boys grow up just struggling to be, try to make it in athletics or something, so they can get out of the little town, out of the little rut of living in these little like prairie towns, So, but that's not to disparage the whole state. That's just the area that I grew up in.
Right. I'm not discounting that isn't true, but I guess the point I would be making is, or my response to that would be, do you think there aren't direct equivalents to that in every state?
Oh no, I was just teasing you about that because we were comparing states. So I was like, oh well, I moved. No, it's
I get that. What I'm saying, my point is that when I hear ad nauseum from the left, and I'm not saying you were joking or making a little fun there, but my point is that when I hear ad nauseum from the left, even though in their own states, is going to be the direct equivalent to what they brand the entirety of states like Missouri, right? Oh, well, every single part of Missouri must be like this, right? Very often because they never.
Yeah, there is that.
Just like I've traveled through Illinois many, many times, right? Mm-hmm. There's a good percentage of Illinois, topographically, economically, whatnot, ain't too much different than when you cross over the border into Missouri, right?
Right. Yeah. There's
Same
not too
thing
much
when you cross over into Indiana, right? Or you're like driving through Ohio, like, oh, I just passed Toledo. Oh man, that is flat. There's a bunch of barns. That's it. It's anyway.
Leaving the mountain behind. Yeah, I hear you.
Hey, can I interrupt here for a minute? Because I've just noticed, it's a little bit off topic here, but I've just noticed that Donnie is basically hunting for communists in the comment section there. So I just wanted to play this to honor him.
Fro, I have a question for you. the mitochondrial element, I believe it's only 16,000 base pairs, if I'm not mistaken. And it's an extremely fast mutating element. So if deep time was true, then we would expect these things to be mutated to oblivion. The problem is that all humans on Earth are only separated by, I believe, approximately 22 fixed mutations in the mtDNA. How would you explain that?
Ooh, good question.
So things can rapidly evolve over time, or they can just do it at a snail's pace. And as I said, it depends on the mutations that take place, particularly, and also
You want me to ask it again?
And also the factors that come by.
Would you like me to ask the question again?
I guess. Go ahead.
Okay, so it is an extremely fast mutating element. That means it mutates fast. We observe this. The problem is that all humans on Earth, everywhere, we're only all separated by approximately 22 fixed mutations.
Okay.
So that flies right in the face of deep time. How do you explain that? In other words, if evolution was true, then we would expect far more diversity in this element. We would expect far more than 22 mutations. 22 is far too few for this fast element.
Redefine. How did you come up with the idea that 22 is too few?
Because it mutates so fast. I think they get a
the non-viable mutations are removed from the.
Yeah, hold on. Every few generations, a mutation gets fixed. So we've observed this.
So why is
there are observable? I'm sorry. Go ahead. What'd you say?
I'm wondering. You say 22 is too few. Do you have a actual reason, or is that like I think it's 22 is too few? Like
no, so there's
math that shows that that's not correct.
I can show you what a phylogenetic tree if John shares my screen. Keep going, Sam. I'll pull up the tree while you talk.
What we call a pedigree mutation rate. And a pedigree mutation rate is the rate at which we observe. Okay, so the reason why that's a problem, and you can acknowledge the problem because the evolutionists, they say, oh no, we have to calibrate this. And they fabricate this imaginary mutation rate they call a phylogenetic mutation rate because it mutates too fast to represent that time. So you can get that from your own camp, Org.
Well, see, Org, if you look here, this is a representation of what Sam's saying. This is mitochondrial DNA diversity worldwide. And the mutation rate is roughly 0.5 per generation. There's a paper here, I think it's based on the control region. And it says the rate is about, let me see here, a more recent study demonstrated that mutations in the mitochondrial control region occur at a rate of 1 every other generation. Okay, so about 0.5 every other generation, which is very fast, way faster than evolutionists ever predicted. So this is a phylogenetic tree of mitochondrial DNA diversity worldwide. And the thing is, with a fast mutation rate, as Sam was pointing out, there's only a few DNA differences on average separating any two people.
Yeah. Okay. So the question would be, or like, how far back are you going to put that split, and how many generations have there been since that split? And at that rate of 0.5 per generation, approximately, you can have a lot more fixed mutations with those deep time assumptions.
Okay, so so first of all, you guys know Brain Bug answers a lot better than me. But so I understand the question correctly, humans average a half a mutation change a generation, or a mutation change every 2. We have 22 distinct changes on average for people. Therefore, mutation changes have only been going for 44 generations. Is that the argument?
Far too few for deep time. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because according to your numbers, you'd have 44 generations, and then we'd all have
these aren't our numbers. These are the numbers.
Well, like the rates are from secular papers, is what Sam's saying.
But you're saying like 40 to 50 generations back, you would not have these mutation changes. Is that what you're saying, essentially?
It would go less and less. So if there's approximately 22 today, when we extrapolate that back, it only extrapolates back just a few thousand years,
right?
Based on the empirical rate.
Is that assuming a consistent generational rate? Is that?
Well, no, we do know there's different generation times. We also know that mutation rates are not, I mean, they're consistently fast, but if you notice on this phylogenetic tree, this is the HVR haplogroup, most common in Europe. You'll notice the lines are DNA differences over time, right? This is just random mutations in people groups over time. Some lines in this haplogroup specifically are longer than the other lines. That means people in the same amount of time are picking up more mutations than their cousins.
Right.
So now that unfortunately breaks the evolutionary molecular clock. So the evolutionists can't make an assumption on, well, you know, the humans and chimpanzees, you know, they split from a common ancestor, let's say 9 million years ago. And there's this many DNA differences between the two. And therefore, you know, we're going to look to this specific rate. Well, actually, what we see here destroys those assumptions. Overall, what we see.
Coming at this, again, as someone who's not in this field, how much would population size play a factor in this? Because obviously larger population size would give you more chance for mutation. And as we all know, population has skyrocketed in the last 100 years.
Especially since farming
get fixed. I think that in a larger population, I think the mutations would get fixed a little bit slower.
Yeah.
And so that,
you'd have more chances for mutation then.
That would create
by definition
a much bigger. So that would create a much bigger problem from your model, because you have this small population of about 6,000 to 10,000, and you have this population inbreeding for about 120 to 200,000 years before there's a man. So I mean, you've just brought up a great point for our model, not for yours though.
Well, first of all, I think you have to understand. You literally just admitted that with small populations, you're going to get these kinds of mutation changes very slowly, right? Well, I understand
they would accumulate. They would get fixed faster.
In a small population, you have faster fixation rates. Now, here's the thing. This is a good question. I want to point this out. Okay. So what we see in this unrooted tree is explosive growth from a center point. Now, what's fascinating about that is our model, the biblical model of ancestry, would say that after the flood, you have 8 people: Noah, Noah's wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. Okay. Mitochondrial DNA is inherited on the mother's side, on the women's side. Okay. So that's interesting, because according to the Bible, we have explosive growth, right? We had rapid and exponential population growth from 3 original couples, Noah's sons and their wives. And yet this is what we see on this unrooted phylogenetic tree. We see explosive growth from a center point. So what this is telling us is, at first, when you have a small population, okay, right after the flood, and then at Babel, and then eventually they spread out after Babel, we would have rapid fixation rates. Okay, new mutations coming in quick, but because the population is small, we have rapid fixation of new mutations. Now we have today, and what we see on average is only about 20 to 25 between any 2 people on the globe. We have a fast mutation rate. Okay, so that is expected from our model of ancestry and diversification, or the repopulation after the flood. But evolutionists want to say that this is thousands of generations, right? Going back to 200,000 to 300,000 years to their mitochondrial Eve somewhere in Africa. But wait a minute, this isn't tens of thousands of mutations. This is only a few mutations. So the question is that Sam's asking, it's a good question. How do evolutionists account for such low diversity with a fast mutation rate? Go ahead.
I may or may not be able to answer that, because
why don't we let Brainbug take a shot, Fro?
Because because
which way is up or down. To be honest with you, you haven't been able to understand a single thing. But Brainbug, they keep talking about you like you're the guy who can figure this out.
Me? No, I mean I talk about populations, and this is kind of my bread and butter here a little bit, but just because it's the kind of papers I'm used to looking at and these kind of charts that I'm used to reading. What I see here is again, I can refer back to the domestication thing, a domesticated genome where you have isolated populations being selectively bred in different groups. As far as why we don't see more mutations in our genome is because as you know, the percentage of deleterious or neutral mutations is a lot higher than anything that's going to be positive and be passed on, because if they're deleterious, your chances of reproduction are less. So you don't see those additional mutations. The majority of the mutations getting passed down through the generations. Just those few that you do
Fro might have
see.
answered that question a little bit better than you, Brainbug, because that wasn't the question at all.
Oh,
the question was, how do you explain all of the similarity, the low variation within this element?
That's what I was saying, because the ones that, because
you're saying selection removed most of it.
Yeah, selection removes the the other mutations, right?
Okay.
Get that.
And
so
I want to bring
I want to engage that a bit, because that's a worthwhile answer to engage. Okay, so we have something called purifying selection, and in the mitochondrial DNA, especially in portions of the mitochondrial DNA like the D loop region, the control region, they are incredibly important for the health of an organism. So if you get a mutation there that's deleterious or damaging, then what happens? Well, selection involves the death of an individual, so that mutation's not passed on. Brainbug. So you're saying over time, although we could expect higher diversity, more DNA differences, the deleterious mutations were weeded out through selection. So that's why there's only a few.
And I think I would only add that that different environmental factors are also going to come into play. The time in which the mutations were taking place and whether they took hold in the population is going to make a difference if it's taking place during like a major extinction event, after an extinction event, during a time of stasis. Different things like that are going to come into play into how well a mutation takes hold in a population.
So Brainbug, I want to ask you a question, and then because I want to see if maybe you want to retract that answer or not. It sounds to me like you just confirmed genomic degradation. You're acknowledging that there are these mutations that are deleterious. So if that's your answer to solve this problem, then I want to ask you, what mechanism do you have to rid these populations of these deleterious mutations that are not selected by natural
because
selection?
they don't get those, they don't reproduce. Most of them are not even viable as an embryo, so they don't.
No,
most of them make it.
You're saying that there was. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it just the reproductive success is not 100%. Not even close in most species. You're not going to see every offspring being viable, and the ones that do make it to adulthood, if they have these deleterious mutations, they're not going to reproduce. They're not going to pass on their genes. They're not part of the population. So that's why they're not, those deleterious effects are not part of the surviving population.
Yeah, let me ask my question again, because you acknowledge that these deleterious mutations, they accumulate to the point where these groups are dying. That's literally what you said. But my question,
individuals in the population are dying, not the whole population. There are individuals that make it through. That is the population.
Well, then you didn't answer the previous question, because we're talking about the low. We're talking about the low dissimilarity between all humans around the globe, and you're saying, well, there's these individuals within the populations that are dying, but then that doesn't really answer the question. But if there are these harmful mutations that are accumulating, the question was, here's the part where you need to pay attention. What do you do with those mutations that are not selected by natural selection? Your answer was what natural selection does select for, and I'm asking you, what about these slightly?
Get selected for, so they don't matter. They're gone. They're done. They're not.
Well, what do you mean they're gone?
They're removed from the population.
They don't just magically poof away.
Yeah, they do They leave generationally.
If one generation, if a member of a generation has a mutation that makes it have no eyes, so it can't see in its environment, it doesn't reproduce to pass on the gene to have no eyes.
All right, so that one got selected. So again, Brainbug, the question was, what do you do with these mutations that natural selection does not select for? That means that these slightly deleterious mutations are going to continue to accumulate because natural selection does not select for them. So I'm asking you for a mechanism to rid the populations of these accumulating slightly deleterious mutations, which again, natural selection does not select for.
Not exactly. You're answering your own question. It does not select for them, so they're
then they accumulate.
No, how do they accumulate if it does not select?
Because natural selection doesn't remove them.
Well, because they're subject
because they're not passed down, they're not continued on through the generation.
Then it's selected.
Them on. So they're not. They don't continue. They're deleted from the genetic population.
That would be a selection. You're saying if this thing happens, then they get removed by natural selection. I'm saying, what do you do about those slightly deleterious ones that natural selection does not select for, and they do get passed on? Each generation is
when you say natural
accumulating
selection does not
mutations.
select
The
for it,
worst of them get removed by natural selection. Okay, the less harmful ones continue to accumulate.
Brainbug. That just go. I think he's using select backwards, but that's fine, right? So, we can move forward with the question, even though he's using select backwards.
I don't think I'm using select back. Perhaps I am. Correct me. So, if natural selection selects something and kills it.
No, if natural selection selects something, it means that it reproduces. That's where it's selecting that group or that individual from the population to procreate for the next population.
Well, it can select out an individual if it's a death of an individual, then selection is removing that individual from the equation and therefore no reproduction, right?
Yeah, that's the context.
So you asked, are you asking about the negative mutations, the deleterious mutations that actually do take hold in the population?
We're talking about, so the very worst of these mutations will be removed from the population. The rest of them will continue to accumulate throughout generations.
Yeah. Okay. I'm fine with that.
That's genomic degradation.
Why?
Well, you just said it. That was your answer to the first
if they
question.
Get to a point to where they're not viable anymore, then they are removed from the genome. But doesn't mean that viable genetics are not passed down as well. You have deleterious genes in your body right now. So ones that are gonna, if you keep living and living, ones that are gonna turn to cancer. You have genetics in your body that are deleterious and they're going to take you out eventually at some point. Everybody.
Well, here's the problem with that though, Brainbug, and that's a good point. Is, for example, here's the human germline mutation rate from Dr. Michael Lynch, world famous population geneticist. An average newborn contains 100 de novo mutations. So on average, the human mutation rate is roughly 100 new mutations per person per generation. Okay, most of those though. Okay, and this is according to evolutionary population geneticists, not young Earth creationists. The majority of those are only slightly deleterious to the point where they're passed on. Okay, it's not that they're just absolutely neutral. There's actually a paper here that says it seems unlikely that any mutation is truly neutral in the sense that it has no effect on fitness, right? All mutations must have some effect, even if that effect is vanishingly small. Notice this. Very slightly deleterious mutants, population geneticists frequently talk about this, continuously arise and accumulate in every species. The rate of loss of fitness per generation may amount to 10 to 7 per generation. So the whole point is, in my answer to what you're saying, Brainbug, is that every single human being on the planet, let's say there's 7 or 8 billion people, we are all multiply mutant, because every single person, if they have kids, they're passing on 100 new mutations per person per generation. So you're saying, well, once the population, descends into enough genetic sickness, then selection will remove them from the equation. But here's the thing: every single human is multiply mutant, so you can't remove every single human being. That's extinction.
Right.
So
it's just the cream of the crop, right? You just keep the cream of the crop. That's the way evolution works. Whatever works the best in that ecology. That's why we see an elevation in the rate in mutation rates after an extinction event, where animals are moving into different ecological niches and finding success with different homologies and different characteristics.
Brainbug.
I want to make a quick point on that if we can.
I'd like to go first, please. Brainbug.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. Would your original argument of the bottlenecking, essentially humans selecting to keep negative mutations like blindness,
right? Because we domesticated ourselves. Yeah, so we hold on to these negative mutations or negative mutations.
Autistic people reproduce. Down syndrome people have kids. Dwarfism has kids. Blind people have kids. So all of these arguments that it should be somehow removed, we are making it with our human society.
That's why dogs are so weird too, because we build them basically based on different
bulldogs are atrocious genetically, but we keep them because they look cute, and we apparently hate having happy dogs. So
That's why
well, here's the problem. I understand what you're saying. So selection, natural selection, essentially has been removed in humans because we take care of the sick,
right.
and therefore
And in domestic
we have
animals still.
medicine, right? Now, here's the thing: that there is a paper that suggests that the mutation rate in all mammals is generally high, and the same still applies, that most mutations are still effectively neutral. You'll see population geneticists like Kimura, they'll refer to these slightly deleterious mutations as effectively neutral, right? It's not that they have no effect on genotype or phenotype. It's just, it's like a single spelling mistake in a book the size of an encyclopedia. It's not enough for reproduction to not occur. Okay, so yeah, humans, we would expect humans are degenerating faster now that selection's been removed. And just for sake of argument, you could say, you know what, let's remove 50% of the worst mutants on the planet. Okay, so let's say we remove 4 billion of just the worst mutants.
Sound like Thanos.
Like Thanos, he just snaps his finger and bam, the worst mutants are gone. But here's the issue.
Eugenics.
But here's the issue is, since everybody is accumulating 100 new mutations per person per generation, you're still left with 4 billion people that are more mutant than the generation before it. So the point is, mutations still accumulate no matter how much selection removes out of the equation. And therefore, selection can only slow down the degeneration process. In the wild, there is stronger selection because you don't see the zebras or the lions, okay, taking care of the sick and you know, going to the doctors and so on and so forth. So we would expect the degeneration in the wild to be slightly slower, but the problem's still there. And we do see that in a variety of animal species in the wild. We do see that they are under intense genetic sickness due to mutation accumulation.
Yeah,
so
like
yeah,
cheetahs.
humans are going to degenerate faster because of that, but it doesn't solve the problem. It only allows selection to slow down the process in both the wild and human populations. And one thing I want to say, and then guys, take as much time as you want because there's been so many points said here. Earlier, Brainbug was talking about the Y chromosome and these bottlenecks. But the problem is the Y chromosome and the mitochondrial DNA, they both mutate fast, but yet humans have incredibly low genetic variation in those compartments. But when we compare them to the chimpanzee, they are so vastly different that the only way we can explain a fast mutation rate and low genetic variation is the fact that these DNA compartments are young. And that's why I don't find that the responses that were provided earlier, although interesting and worth considering, I don't think that they work overall. Go ahead, I yield.
Yeah, that was the point, because when we were asked about the mtDNA, the answer was that there are these deleterious mutations. And I said, well, that's fine. If you want to invoke mutations as a solution, then you're going to have to deal with this genomic degradation. So one solution just brings up another problem. That was
a ripple effect of problems.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster ride, isn't it? Genetics are crazy.
Well, only from your model.
Oh, you think so? Okay.
Yeah.
There was a question that I've always kind of had rolling around my head here. Like this one fellow was saying, natural selection will always kind of keep the cream of the crop for the species to reproduce. How would a flat-footed chimpanzee overrun a population of tree-climbing chimpanzees?
Was that question for me, or?
That ain't for me.
Anybody that kind of supports the theory that, you know, Lucy had flat feet and was able to start a whole population of her own kind of idea.
Yeah, I think it was like we talk about the desiccation of Central Africa at that time, that you start to see the rainforest kind of peel back and make way for the savanna, and a lot of that savanna is still there today, where it was, instead of being just a vast jungle where you can move through the treetops, there were little patches where there might be fruit growing in this section and that section, and whoever was most efficient to move from one little bush to another.
That doesn't really jive with how we see life today. Like, we today can go in and desiccate a rainforest and no animal stays. They all leave. They all go.
They go, but they're traveling between the little patches is what they do. Is what that's what the model is, that they were moving from tree area to tree area until there were no more tree areas anymore, and they just, as they became more and more efficient, moving from one place to another, walking bipedally, they just kind of took hold. And
the idea, though, that they would lose the ability of climbing trees because their forest went away, as opposed to moving with the forest.
Did you lose the ability to climb trees? I still can.
Well, I guarantee you can't climb trees like a chimpanzee.
Oh, are you going to put your money where your mouth is?
I would.
I climb trees pretty good. I got 3 kids.
We'll hang a banana from the top of a tree and put you in a chimpanzee and see who gets there first.
Yeah, we'll race. It might eat my face though if I eat the banana. Chimpanzees are pretty aggressive.
Yeah, so let me talk about that idea that only the cream of the crop. Let's see what that looks like in the real world. So imagine if you had a bunch of guys, let's say like a work crew, okay, and you put them all in white shirts, and they wore that same shirt day after day. And you're saying, well, the ones that don't, natural selection will select a few to get carried on. And we're saying, well, there's these mutations or these stains that are accumulating on that white shirt. So you don't start off with a new white shirt every day. Each generation, it has these mutations that have accumulated, and those get passed on, and the next generation picks up even more, just like stains on a white shirt. So when you say, oh, well, there's this cream of the crop and that's what survives, that's like saying I got this crusty old white shirt, but it's not as crusty as these others.
Right.
You still have to deal with those mutations and those that have accumulated. You still have to deal with all that nasty on the white shirt.
And that's a great point. Like, even with wildlife conservation, like with hunting permits that they give out, there's a reason why there's a certain number of points on an antler you're allowed to take. And if it's below a certain amount, it's illegal to actually shoot that animal. We as people actually have the responsibility to keep certain gene pools in check.
To retain that genetic diversity, right? To get those big racks. Absolutely.
Yeah, big rack.
But I agree with what you said.
It's not the big rack. It's the big rack is a consequence of good, healthy genetics.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with getting big points. It is keeping the proper amount of nutrition in the animal.
Well, this shows off how healthy the buck is. If it's got a big antlers, it's to the female, it's like, oh, he's healthy. He's got all that he's getting so much extra nutrition that he can waste it growing those big old antlers. He's the one I want to have babies with. That's what the doe's thinking, right?
It's very depressing.
For every percentage that goes into the antlers, there's 10 that goes into the body.
Hey, so you guys know that deer is going to be the only context where the woman is checking out the rack.
That's the joke I was trying to make. The cat. Whoa. I kept trying to. Lord, I've drank too much tonight. I gotta go to bed.
Oh,
yeah. So that cream of the crop. I mean, that's a nasty, beat up, deleterious genome that you're talking about.
We're all dirty, tattered t-shirts. I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
We're all dirty, tattered.
Constantly sweeping up a junkyard.
Well, so my
just
question.
Good enough to survive. It's basically all that matters. Just good enough to survive in the environment we find ourselves in. We don't have to be clean gene. We just something that can survive and reproduce. That's the main point. But you guys have been great. Redefine Living. I'm sorry I just got to start talking to you, and I think we could have a great discourse sometime. Let's do this again. John, thanks for having me. SFT, always a pleasure. Orge, I'll see you at Squatch Talk. Bible research too. I didn't get to talk to you too much, but it was nice to meet you. And Zach, I thank you for kind of engaging with me about the here at the end about the deer genetics. That's pretty interesting stuff. Y'all have a great night.
Goodbye.
Take it easy, Brain.